Chapter 31 Inevitable Fate. You are listening at novelfull.audio. At this point, Mu'Ueli also wondered what the Elf Queen's attitude toward Seal was. Why did she give him such a precious resource? Was it a gift to honor the goddess? Unfortunately, the news that Seal was the young king of the Elf Kingdom was only known to the elven higher-ups. Of course, they wouldn't spread the news now. By the way, can you make the area safe here? I'm tired of standing and wearing armor, Seal said while Mu'Ueli was still silent. That's dangerous, an accident could cause you to burn to death, Mu'Ueli replied. You underestimate me too much. This place also can't kill me because I'm protected by the strongest protection formation of the Ice Goddess and the Elf Queen, Seal replied, surprising Mu'Ueli and even Isla who were standing in front. How could they not? They had also expected that, but the goddess had not given them any despite their many contributions to the Ice Palace. Plus, Seal had even gotten a protection formation from the Elf Queen. This made Mu'Ueli wonder if a god could kill him. What are you waiting for? Don't delay an order from me, Seal said again in a tone that seemed angry. Mu'Ueli pressed her lips together before finally doing as he asked. With one move, Mu'Ueli created an area surrounded by a transparent ice wall so that no fire could enter. Even the heat from the fire was not felt there at all. There was only cool air that was very comfortable to breathe. Since Seal was tired of standing, Mu'Ueli also took out a very comfortable chair to relax on. Seal ordered her to remove the ice armor before sitting down. However, even after sitting down, he was still staring at Mu'Ueli. What else? The woman asked, looking like she was worried. Seal responded by gesturing for her to come closer. What do you want? Mu'Ueli couldn't help but frown at that. She had a bad feeling. Even Isla was staring at him with bated breath. She wondered if this young man would be even more unreasonable. Sit beside me, Seal replied, saying his wish. Do you want to refuse my order? He then asked with narrowed eyes. The so-called orders in the Right Path sect are only if they are good things, despicable things cannot be considered orders, Mu'Ueli replied, still refusing Seal's orders. You really dare, huh? Do you consider my orders to be bad things? Seal showed an increasingly impatient expression. He couldn't deny that there was a desire to dominate. This was indeed an instance where a fish became a dragon, or if it was on Earth, a poor man who suddenly became rich from winning the lottery, it was becoming increasingly absurd. Fortunately, Seal was still aware of his own behavior. He thought that was enough because what was dangerous was being reckless without realizing one's own depravity. And in front of Mu'Ueli, Seal could be sure to always be safe because even her strongest attacks would not be able to do anything to him. Seal suddenly thought of something. He waved his hand, pulling Mu'Ueli's body towards him, just like he had once done to Mu'Ishue. He did that just for fun, but surprisingly enough, Mu'Ueli's body instantly floated in the air, moving towards him before falling on his thigh. You! Mu'Ueli's mouth opened, stunned by this sudden movement. Isla was even shaken so much that her body swayed, not believing that Mu'Ueli would let Seal pull her body. She was a third-stage demigod, her strength so great that she could easily sink a small continent like the Fire Mountain continent. She could practically resist Seal's pull with just her physical strength, but instead she did nothing. Although she was now shocked and seemed to realize that she was careless, it was unfortunately too late. Seal quickly hugged her waist, and brought his face closer to hers. With a faint smile, he said, "It seems that you are just shy, dear Ueli." He did not hesitate to call her with affectionate calls, even saying her name. Mu'Ueli, who was originally ready to jump, froze again with a flushed face. Even her breathing became quick and warm. Seal observed her beautiful middle-aged face and short hair. When he glanced down, he could see her thighs, which were exposed quite a lot since she was only wearing a short dress. Her lips as they parted were captivating. They were slightly wet, so the urge to stick his tongue into her lips was strong. Seal naturally did not hold back as the opportunity was in sight. With a quick movement, he kissed her lips, making her freeze even more. Up until now, Seal had never even kissed Mu Yixue, who could practically be considered to be already submissive to him, but today he kissed her aunt. Of course, there was a logical reason for that. The young Mu Yixue was easier to conquer. Plus Seal had her secrets, but Mu Yulie was naturally different, not easy to conquer. Hence, kissing her to give her a deep impression was good for the future development of their relationship. Unlike Mu Yulie's eyes that were always cold, her lips were warm and soft, giving Seal infinite sensations, even raising his desire to the highest point that he tore off her dress and explored her body. Unfortunately, before he could do so, Mu Yulie had already come to her senses. She hastily jumped up and almost fell as she landed. After which, she pointed at Seal with trembling hands. Why don't you? How dare you?" she said in a halting tone. Unfortunately, Seal responded to her reaction with a faint smile. He touched his own lips, which still had the flavor of Mu Yuli's lips. "Now you know that I am a brave man," he replied. "You took my first kiss," Mu Yulie replied. Her breasts moved up and down as she said that. Her words were actually quite surprising to Seal, he hadn't expected her to care so much about that. "You can think of it as an inevitable fate for two people who are destined to have each other," Seal said. Those words were probably suitable for a conservative woman like Mu Yulie. Chapter 32 Return. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Nonsense. Mu Yulie clearly did not accept Seal's words, she had nothing but anger. Seal replied casually, "But it happened, right? You're the one who made it happen." "Yeah, but you know that my movements are due to fate, otherwise, how could a first-stage spiritual master kiss a third-stage demigod? Without the intervention of fate, it's impossible." Seal continued to say nonsense even though he himself did not believe in fate. Unfortunately, some people really did believe. Mu Yulie was probably one of them, she was just trying to resist because it was a destiny that was too shocking for her. At this point, she was no longer able to answer Seal's words. Due to her fickle mood, her skin also changed, sometimes flushing and sometimes pallid. "Yulia, you have to calm down." Isla became worried about her, so she had to divide her attention. Unfortunately, it was really difficult for Mu Yulie to calm down even though she was actually the one with the best composure among the Ice Palace elders. Isla wondered if she were to experience that, what would happen? Whoosh! Suddenly Mu Yulie moved, flying upwards, coming out of the Holy Spirit flame in an instant. She didn't stop, continuing to fly into that volcanic crater. Mu Yixue and the other Ice Palace disciples who saw her frowned as they could feel her aura becoming chaotic. What's going on? They began to wonder. Right after that, Mu Yulie flew further into the sky and disappeared from their sight a moment later. "Was there an accident?" asked one of the disciples. "Perhaps, after all, there are always unexpected things when dealing with a thing like the Holy Spirit flame," replied the other. "But I don't think she was hurt," Mei Mei added. Her eyes looked at Mu Yixue, who was narrowing her eyes as she stared at where Mu Yulie had disappeared. Of course, Mu Yixue herself couldn't guess what was going on. Below, Seal was stunned as he watched Mu Yulie's departure. "Is she sulking?" he wondered without hiding his voice. Isla gritted her teeth when she heard his words, she snorted coldly and said, "You really are petty, no wonder your cultivation is so low. You go to any random place and you will find thousands of people who are better than you." Probably because she knew words of warning and such were useless to Seal, so Isla had no other choice but to mock his weakness. His mood had soured slightly due to Mu Yulie's departure, and Isla's words were enough to upset him. He snorted at her and replied coldly, "Just do your job, and don't speak again, or I'll fuck you right here." "You." Isla staggered, but she couldn't help but panic because of Seal's earlier boldness. Her instincts told her that this young man would not be afraid to go that far towards her. In the end, she could only contain her annoyance, not speak anymore, and focus on her task. Seal began to lie down on the chair, very relaxed as he waited for Isla. Over time, the Holy Spirit flame became smaller and smaller. Isla was indeed doing her job well. There was no chaos whatsoever throughout the process. And of course no one else had come since Isla sent her spear. The people, even the demigods from afar, did not dare to act immediately, they investigated first. When they realized that this was the business of the people from the Ice Palace, they left immediately. When the sky had darkened somewhat, Isla finally finished transferring the Holy Spirit flame into the seal. "Done," she said in a low voice while looking around. It was now an empty crypt. There were no more flames at all, only the remains of the burnt area. Isla made a brief observation as if she was looking for something, perhaps wanting to know the hidden formation that made the Holy Spirit flame unable to significantly affect the continent above. "Hand it over." Seal suddenly approached her and extended his hand towards her. Knowing that he wanted the seal, Isla immediately handed it over as she didn't want any more drama between them. Seal took a look at the seal. Without using the eyes of heaven, he was really made to think that it was just ordinary paper. If he found it on the street, he might not hesitate to kick it into the trash. Smiling, he put the seal into his storage ring. "Let's go," he said as he flew upwards. Isla followed behind him while constantly glancing down. They arrived at the volcano again in no time. Mu Ishue and the others waited almost motionlessly. They all stared at Seal, wondering what he had experienced under the volcano. Seal didn't say anything to them, he just gave a sign to leave immediately. Once on board the Ark, Isla immediately moved the Ark towards the north where the ice continent was. It became a journey at night, but it wouldn't be the realm of life if there wasn't beauty. In the sky, countless stars and galaxies emitted infinite light, forming various scenes that dazzled the eyes. Occasionally, a star falls, and explodes to brighten the sky. In fact, the continents below that humans inhabit are also full of light, none of which look dark. Seal enjoyed the view so much that he continued to stand at the side of the Ark's deck while the Ice Palace disciples watched him with various expressions. Since it was a return trip, time seemed to go faster. Before they knew it, they arrived back in front of the courtyard of the Goddess Palace. Even the night was crowded there, and people were discussing the Ice Prince's journey, wondering where he had gone. Meanwhile, when Seal wanted to get off the Ark, Mu Ishue, who was following him, suddenly said, "Prince, how about we go to the night market on the outskirts of the city, there's a lot of good food there." Seal was surprised to hear her take the initiative to invite him somewhere, but looking at her expression, he thought he knew why. This woman was just too nervous, afraid of being taken to the room, so she wanted to delay the time. However, Seal did not think her suggestion was a bad one. With a faint smile, he nodded. "Just the two of us, the others can go home," he said, which instantly made Mu Ishue's lips part. Chapter 33 Whitehorse. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. At first, Mu Ishue felt embarrassed when there were Ice Palace disciples around because they would see how Seal did things to her. However, right now, she felt awkward just going out alone with Seal. Didn't it look like they were on a date? Mei Mei and the disciples who had been mesmerized by Seal pressed their lips together. Their feelings became uncontrollable since they knew that the frozen heart actually had another way, which was to love someone until the heart froze. Unfortunately, the man they found attractive was now only focused on one of them. And it was the prettiest one, so competing became difficult. When they leave, they can't help but pout. Mei Mei didn't leave right away. She asked Seal, "Prince, what about this edict?" Although Seal said that she could keep it under normal conditions, but she wasn't sure how when she didn't go with Seal. She was worried that Seal would need the edict when he was alone. Seal thought for a while and finally picked up the edict again. He would hand it over to Mei Mei again when he needed to. Only, even after Seal took the edict, Mei Mei still hadn't left, as if she found it hard to leave. She kept her lips pressed together, occasionally glancing at Mu Ishue, who unfortunately turned her gaze in another direction. Fortunately, at the same time, Isla suddenly called out to Mei Mei when she wanted to leave. "Girl, follow me," she said in a command-like tone. Having been called out by her master, Mei Mei did not dare to remain silent, she immediately followed Isla. It was unknown where they went. Now, there were only Seal and Mu Ishue left in the palace grounds. The woman seemed more nervous now. And Seal didn't mince words either, he immediately grabbed her hand, pulling her until she leaned against his body. "Prince." Mu Ishue spontaneously uttered that because of her racing heart. Seal observed her ruddy face and eyes that seemed as if they dared not look at him. Taking a step, he asked, "What do you think of me now? What kind of opinion?" Mu Ishue couldn't help but panic at being asked about that. "Yeah, like my appearance and my nature." Seal didn't mind explaining to her, so she really couldn't refuse to answer. Hearing that, Mu Ishue rolled her eyes, glancing in the other direction. "Your nature sucks," she replied. Seal naturally didn't take offense to her answer. Actually, it was common knowledge that if women were attracted to a man, they would say the man was annoying. Maybe they were telling the truth, but at the same time also liked the man's annoying nature. It's different when they really don't have an attraction, whether the guy has annoying traits or good traits, it's all as if it doesn't exist in their eyes. If asked, they will probably answer that they don't know despite seeing the guy often. "What about my appearance, handsome or ordinary?" Seal asked again, even making it clear that Mu Ishue had not answered that one. Obviously it was also because she had trouble saying it. If she said his appearance was mediocre, apart from lying, she also seemed to be mocking Seal. However, if she said that he was handsome, it was even more embarrassing because it seemed like she was a young girl who was mesmerized by a man. At this point, Mu Ishue pressed her lips together, pretending as if she was thinking. She planned to continue like that until Seal thought of another topic. "You, really?" Seal was a little annoyed, he patted her but as punishment, even squeezing it for a moment. "You." Mu Ishue was trembling and embarrassed. Fortunately, they had not yet left the palace grounds. When they arrived at the road in front of the palace grounds, Seal was attracted to a tall and beautiful white horse. Many people also seemed interested in the horse. It belonged to an old man, but he seemed unable to ride it. Plus, the horse even seemed to want to run away from him, so the old man had to hold onto its rope and follow it wherever it went. Incidentally, the horse passed through the area in front of Seal. The old man quickly nodded to Seal, as if he wanted to salute him. "Old man, how about selling this horse to me?" asked Seal suddenly. He was interested for a reason. Within the horse's body, he saw an amazing bloodline. It just hadn't really awakened yet, so the horse didn't create an incomparable aura. Seal's question made the old man show a doubtful expression, perhaps he also knew that this horse was unique. Now that Seal wanted it, he couldn't help but feel uncomfortable. Under ordinary circumstances, people in the ice continent might not hesitate to give an amazing thing to the ice palace, but if it was too unique and full of mystery, even selling it was a tough thing. Unfortunately, this was a situation where the Ice Prince wanted to buy it. When the old man looked at Seal, he found his lips curling up slightly. That somehow frightened him. His instincts told him that something bad would happen if he refused. Not wanting that to happen, he finally nodded. "Prince, there's no need to buy it, I'll give it to you, but as you can see, this horse is rather disobedient," he said hastily. At this point, he dared not accept anything from Seal, so he chose to give the horse directly to him. And he believed that it was a better choice because the Ice Palace would definitely repay him. "Thank you," Seal replied, not refusing the old man's wishes. He grabbed the rope, then extended his hand to a certain area on the horse's body. There was a small thorn piercing its body, completely invisible. Upon touching the thorn, he instantly transferred it to his storage ring, and the horse calmed down instantly. The old man and the people were dumbfounded by the scene. They wondered what had happened. Of course, they didn't see Seal's movements because it was completely hidden. Some looked at each other while saying, as expected, despite his low cultivation, he has abilities. He was instantly able to calm that horse down. At this moment, the horse stuck out its tongue and licked Seal's hand. He. Seal laughed while looking at Muishue. It seems that we don't have to walk this time, he said. Ice City was so vast, it would only take a short while to get out of the city by arc, but walking would take quite a long time. Horseback riding was a better option. Chapter 30. For those watching, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Seal didn't wait for Muishue to react, he hugged her slender waist and jumped onto the horse. Pa! The two landed perfectly on the horse's body, and it was such a comfortable place to sit that their bodies didn't sway at all. People, especially the youths, took a deep breath at the sight. Muishue, who they thought of as an untouchable woman, a woman they could only dream of forever, was suddenly so docile in front of Seal, as if she was giving Seal permission to explore her beautiful body. Of course, Muishue blushed at this situation. She looked at the building with glass walls not far ahead to see her figure, and was instantly mesmerized by the scene on the horse. The handsome figure and the beautiful figure on the gallant horse were like something out of a painting that told the story of the prince and princess of two kingdoms. About two people who were born with perfection and various gifts and united in love. Muishue admired that in which one of the figures was herself. If even she was so in awe, what about the others? Looking around, Muishue found faces that were being mesmerized. Hua! Seal suddenly pulled on the horse's rope, telling it to run immediately. It quickly headed towards the long street that led directly to the city gate, a long and wide street, full of people despite the night sky. Seal didn't need to be cautious when riding a horse here. Some were angered by his speed that almost crashed into their horses and carriages, but when they saw the two people on the white horse, they couldn't help but smile. Even amazed by the sight, so that they spread the word when they arrived elsewhere. In fact, news of them spread faster than a forest fire in summer. The people in the suburbs even knew before Seal and Muishue arrived there. Muishue didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but she couldn't argue that this was such a charming trip. Leaning against Seal's chest, she could feel warmth and comfort, while Seal's hand hugging her waist made her feel very safe. She did not need to use any strength, as Seal's hand guaranteed she would not fall off the horse's back. Dear Ishue. Seal suddenly spoke while resting his chin on her shoulder. That he would tease her was something Muishue expected, she was already prepared for it, so could respond calmly. Her eyes only trembled for a moment as she looked at Seal's face beside hers. What? She replied with a question. Tonight you are mine, Seal replied in a soft voice. Muishue rolled her eyes at that. She replied, haven't I been yours since yesterday? When saying that, she showed helplessness, as if she was complaining that Seal had oppressed her. Seal kept the same expression, he inhaled the scent of her breath before continuing, I want to have you completely and you accept me completely. What's the difference? Muishue pretended not to understand. Of course, she understood that Seal wanted her to accept him in a romantic way, not a forced one. In her opinion, this was a very selfish way of thinking. How could it not be? He threatened her with her shameful secret, and now he wanted her to love him sincerely. Unfortunately, even though it was a selfish thing, Mu found her heart racing when she thought about it. There was something she couldn't control, which was her own feelings. Over time, it caused her facial skin to turn red. She began to dread looking at Seal, so she shifted her gaze to another direction. Fortunately, Seal seemed to have no intention of forcing her to answer, as he focused on enjoying her body, stroking her hair while inhaling her scent. Little did they know that someone was watching them from behind a window. She was a woman with short hair and wearing a white dress that only reached her thighs. Who else if not Muishue, the aunt of Muishue? Her lips pressed together when she saw Seal's figure on the white horse. She continued to stare at his back after the horse passed her by. You did as you pleased to me and now you're easily going out with another woman, she said in a low voice, a voice that seemed to hide a grievance. She did not know what was happening. After Seal kissed her, her head was filled with that man. Even when she wanted to meditate, her brain kept thinking about him, and kept remembering how he kissed her. Leaving at that moment was something she had to do, but it was also something she regretted. Out of curiosity, she even went as far as watching him. When she finally saw him with another woman, even though that woman was her own niece, she suddenly felt very jealous. Mu Yueli was not stupid, and she knew that there was a possibility that she wanted a relationship with Seal. However, she would not assume it was because she did like a man like Seal. To her, it was just because he had kissed her, which she was beginning to believe was destiny, and her personality wanted the man who kissed her to be responsible for her. Actually, she was not the only one keeping an eye on Seal. In a magnificent tall building, a handsome man with long blonde hair smashed the cup he was holding. His eyes became so cold that the old man and the young man behind him were frightened. "Your Highness, please calm down, you can't do anything here," said the old man. The young man was actually the prince of the Eastern Ice Kingdom, a kingdom located at the eastern end of this continent. It could be said to be the strongest faction under the Ice Palace. Its king was a third-stage demigod, equivalent to Mu Yueli. There were indeed other factions that were also led by third-stage demigods in the Ice Continent. However, the Eastern Ice Kingdom was said to have one other third-stage demigod hiding under the royal palace. The prince's name was Luca, also famous in the Ice Continent as one of the greatest geniuses. Because of his greatness, he naturally wanted the best woman for him. Mu Yixue, who was a disciple of the Ice Goddess, was definitely the best choice. Although he rarely saw her, he always secretly loved her. Those who dared to dream about Mu Yixue beside him always got punished by him. In fact, he himself respected Mu Yixue. Knowing that Ice Palace disciples were not allowed to have relationships with men, so he chose not to try approaching Mu Yixue. For him, a relationship where there were secret feelings was enough. And in the future, when each of them led the people of this continent, they would still look like a couple. Unfortunately, before that point, a young man suddenly came along, became an ice prince and even acted as if Mu Yixue was his woman. When he heard the news, Luca immediately went to this city to see it in person because he didn't quite believe it. Now, he saw it personally, his heart had nothing but anger. Chapter 35 Night Market. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. "I'm going to kill this boy," he said suddenly. "Your Highness." The old man and the young man trembled as they heard his words. This was the Ice Prince, someone who was suspected to be the son of the Ice Goddess. If he was killed, the Ice Goddess might go on a rampage. The worst thing was that she would destroy this continent. Actually, if Seal really died, it could be that the Ice Goddess and the Elf Queen went on a rampage throughout the realm of life, slaughtering everyone so that their video would not be seen by anyone. "I know the consequences," Luca said. "And I'm ready for them. That boy has to die before he defiles Yixue any further. Even if I die afterward, it won't matter because Yixue will no longer look for another man. If there is a next life, I'm sure fate will have me with her." Luca's words made both the old man and the young man open their mouths with frozen faces, unsure of how to react. The old man calmed down faster, he took a deep breath and said, "Your Highness, you should also consider the kingdom. You have parents and many relatives there, they could be victimized by your actions." He tried to remind Luca to be more rational. As Luca was about to reply, he continued, "Your Highness, you must also remember his status. I'm afraid that the goddess gave him supreme protection so that no one can kill him." When he heard that, Luca's face froze while his skin paled instantly. Cough. Suddenly he spit out a mouthful of blood and staggered. At this point, the color of his skin changed. After being deathly pale, it became reddish, then bluish, then purplish, and finally became greenish. "Your Highness." The old man supported his body before he fell. I can't accept this, Luca shouted in a voice so loud that it echoed in a wide area. Seal and Mu Ishue could hear his voice, the former could not help but stare in the direction the voice was coming from. Quickly, he saw Luca, who was accompanied by an old man and a young man. What's wrong with him? Seal wondered. He didn't know anything because of what he saw after the man spoke about him. Plus, he didn't know who he was either. However, because of the power of his eyes, he knew that they had an extraordinary background. What's going on? Mu Ishue was also curious, so she asked Seal. Nothing important, probably someone with a cultivation aberration, Seal replied. He wasn't interested in discussing the man further because it didn't seem important. Hua! He sped up the horse so that it started jumping over every obstacle ahead. Little did he know that Luca was following him after he was no longer watching him, but he was following from afar so as not to be seen. Only, his condition was still bad, his shaken heart made his keep coughing, worrying the two people who were following him. They kept giving him advice to rest, but he insisted on going because he wanted to at least do something useful. A while later, Seal and Mu Ishue finally arrived at the outskirts of the city, close to the gate. There was indeed a night market there, very large and full of people. What was sold here was mostly food, but not ordinary food. Most of it was meat from rare beasts. The merchants were probably hunters. After hunting, they would open a market to turn their kill into spiritual stones. It was the most common currency in this world as it could aid cultivation or be used to replenish energy for a short period of time. Overall, there are 4 levels of spiritual stones. Level 1 is usually used by junior spirituals to spiritual kings, level 2 is used by hegemons, level 3 is used by demigods, and finally level 4, which is more commonly called divine stone, is used by gods. The arrival of Seal and Mu Ishue instantly stirred up the night market. People who had never seen them could not help but be amazed, thinking that they were a couple from heaven because of their extraordinary appearance. Some merchants even deliberately drove away their buyers just to empty their stands. This was in order to invite Seal and Mu Ishue to eat at their stand. After stopping the horse, Seal pulled Mu Ishue's waist to get off the horse. Afterward, he patted the horse's head while saying, "Wait here." Shwa la la. The horse opened its mouth upwards and made a sound. Actually, it was not in the parking lot, but in the middle of the road. However, it didn't matter because no one minded that the horse was waiting for Seal here. Seal and Mu Ishue immediately stepped into the night market, holding hands, of course. As they passed by the stands of the night market, the merchants immediately shouted out to them. "Prince, eat at our place, we're selling penguin meat from the Sky Ice Mountain." "No, it's better at our place, we sell the meat of spiritual snow chickens which everyone knows that they can improve cultivation. We're better, we have wine made by monkeys in the immortal snow mountains. Prince, our chefs are snowmen who have been cooking for 100 years, our recipes must be the best." All those merchants were from the big hunter factions. Since they had already spoken, the small merchants did not dare to speak, could only close their mouths, regretting the fact that they were still small. Actually, Seal himself was interested in their offers because each of them was indeed a rare type. Especially that monkey wine, it really wasn't easy to obtain because he heard that the monkeys in the immortal snow mountains were very powerful and they wouldn't be willing to share their wine with others. Stealing from them was the only way to obtain it. Hence, any wine they made would be sold at a high price. "I think I want them all," Seal said. Hearing that, the merchants were immediately delighted and hurriedly ordered their chefs to start cooking. "Come on." Seal then pulled Mu Ishue over to a relaxing table that consisted of a long chair so that the couple could sit together. "Drinking before bed must be nice, right?" he said to her, making her roll her eyes. Actually, she was a little worried about having to drink that monkey wine because it could still make her drunk. Unfortunately, besides not being able to resist Seal's wishes, she was also interested in enjoying it all with Seal. Chapter 36 Eat and Drink. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Prince, Miss Moo, here's the wine. The monkey wine was the first to be delivered because it did not need to be cooked. The owner was an old man with gray hair, carrying a wooden jug. He was actually not weak, being at the 8th stage hegemon. Slowly, he poured the wine in the jug into each cup. When the wine flowed out of the jug, its fragrance instantly spread in the night market, creating a stir among the people. Worthy of being considered the best wine on the ice continent, they said. It is said that even the demigods wouldn't mind helping you if you gave them this wine, added another. In fact, not all demigods have ever drunk it. Someone gave a very surprising piece of info. Seal listened to everyone's conversation and then nodded to the old man after he finished pouring the wine in the jug into each of the cups. He said, "Your merit is greater than the immortal snow mountains for giving me this wine. From now on, if anyone bothers you, just mention my name." "Thank you, Prince." The old man was instantly pleased with Seal's words. This meant a guarantee of safety, at least on the ice continent. The other merchants looked at each other when they heard that, and they became even more excited, hoping that Seal would also say that to them. "You're sure it's worth mentioning your name?" Mu Ishue asked Seal in a low voice, even making a faint barrier to block her voice. Clearly her purpose was to mock Seal for overestimating herself. In truth, her mockery sounded more like teasing, but this also showed that Mu Ishue had a slight desire to resist Seal's dominance. In response to her words, Seal pinched her waist so that her back straightened. "You still dare to doubt, huh? Wait until all the gods in this world obey me, then who wouldn't tremble at my name?" He said so confidently that Mu Ishue had no more words to say. She could only glance at him as if to say, "What a narcissistic man." Finally, there was one who finished cooking, a middle-aged man with a big sword on his back. He carried a tray on which was a roasted chicken with 4 wings. The chicken was coated in various spices, from chili peppers to 100 kinds of onions. The aroma literally made everyone who smelled it look like they were losing steam, which of course was due to their stomachs becoming very hungry. "Please enjoy our meal, Prince. If there are any missing parts, please let me know. I am ready to accept the punishment for my failure," the middle-aged man said, not forgetting to lick Seal. Seal didn't resent the sycophant licking him. He smiled in response and replied, "From the aroma, I can tell it's absolutely perfect. Even if there are flaws, they can be covered up by the advantages. Don't worry, from now on, you also have the right to call my name if anyone bothers you." The middle-aged man immediately smiled at Seal's words. His smile was wider than that of an ape. After him, the others also shared their dishes with Seal, each getting the same rights as the first 2. This made people praise Seal as a kind-hearted man for repaying the kindness of others many times over. Of course, opinions sometimes differ from people who look at things differently. Luca, for example, snorted coldly after he heard everything Seal said. "A foolish boy who knows no bounds, using his background at will definitely bring disaster one day," he said, which the old man behind him unfortunately didn't quite agree with. Actually, there was nothing wrong with Luca's words. Unfortunately, it only applies to his background. Seal's background, on the other hand, was too strong. The old man could not think of a scenario where it would be destroyed just because Seal repaid the merchant's kindness. It's not like he was making trouble for no reason. The old man even thought, "Your Highness, here you are the one with the problem, just because a woman chose another man, you want to make a scene." Seal didn't know anything about them. Once all the food was ready, she began to eat. Here, he didn't ask Mu Ishue for help. He took a fork, stabbing a piece of meat before eating it. This is delicious," he said because it did have a flavor that matched the smell. Afterwards, he patted Mu Ishue's waist, signaling for her to eat as well. However, the woman still seemed hesitant as she saw many gazes around them. Realizing that she was uncomfortable being watched by so many people, Seal finally waved his hand. Go away, continue with your activities, I'm here to eat, not to be watched, he said in a loud voice. When he spoke, no one dared to argue. They started doing their activities again, including the merchants. Looking at them now, Mu Yixue sighed. We should have just come quietly, and disguised our figures, she said. Do you feel that our date has been somewhat interrupted? Asked Seal, making her glance at him as if to say. Stop teasing me. At the moment, she seemed to be feeling more comfortable as she started to eat as well. The two of them did not eat fast, but neither did they eat slow. They ate while enjoying the atmosphere of this night market. It's not just trade but also entertainment. There are some people playing fun music. At this point, Seal wanted to drink the monkey wine. He took both cups of wine and placed one of them in Mu Yixue's hand. He did this so that she would also drink now. Come on, my dear Yixue, he said as he brought the cup to his mouth and kept looking into Mu Yixue's eyes so that she would have no other choice but to start drinking too. Seal was immediately surprised by the sensation in his mouth. The wine was warm, so it was perfect for the cold weather of this city. However, it also had a flavor that seemed to be integrated with its warmth. Just by drinking a little of it, his skin had already become slightly red and his body had become light. The wind blowing around was enough to make him feel like he was floating in the sky. Chapter 37 Disturbance. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Mu Yixue was no different from Seal, she felt the same sensation while her skin was slightly redder. From her expression, it could be seen that she was enduring the sensation, a sight that made most men's eyes go blurry. Although Seal told them to keep moving, the drunken beauty was really too attractive to miss, some might not mind going blind after seeing her. Here, just like on Earth, there was a view that wine was the drink of the devil, a drop could make want a cup. Mu Yixue didn't stop drinking it after starting to try it, making her face even redder. Seal's hand that was hugging her waist at this time could feel her skin becoming very warm. Of course, if anything, the most obvious effect of being drunk was the increased departure. Mu Yixue occasionally looked at Seal with a look that was hard to explain. Honey, let's finish the wine first and go home afterwards, that way, tonight will belong to both of us, Seal said. He picked up the jug, pouring the remaining wine into his cup and Mu Yixue's cup. The latter couldn't help but ask, what does it mean that tonight belongs to both of us, Prince? Although you are extraordinary, you must not claim such a great thing for yourself, every night belongs to everyone. She seemed to be reminding Seal, but in a charming tone. Plus, she was actually saying that Seal was extraordinary. People actually had their own guesses about what Seal meant, but they still wanted to hear the answer from him, so they began to prepare their ears, as if they were afraid of missing a word. Calmly, Seal replied, it's just a figure of speech, I'm sure many newlyweds say it on their first night. What he said made people catch their breath. It practically confirmed to them that Seal would be fucking Mu Yixue tonight. As the most beautiful young lady, most men, from the young to the old, thought that touching Mu Yixue was harder than touching the sky. Being able to fuck her was actually something beyond imagination, supposedly something impossible to happen. Unfortunately, one man seemed to have that chance. Mu Yixue's face blushed with embarrassment at Seal's words, she snorted softly and smacked her thigh. How can you be so shameless to claim like that? I'm not your wife, how can you call tonight our first night? She said in a tone full of complaints but gave off an indescribable vibe. To people, they found no desire to resist in her voice, only shame and annoyance that it was said. Of course, that Mu Yixue spoke so much was also quite surprising, as she was not that type. Usually she would be silent, staring in another direction while pretending not to hear. It was clear that the effects of the wine made some changes to her head, which then changed her personality. Seal laughed softly as he replied, no one can stop me tonight, you will belong to me completely. You. Mu Yixue was still helpless at last, she pouted slightly and hit Seal's chest with her hand as if it had no more strength. How romantic, said some couples watching them. Unfortunately, the tranquility was interrupted by loud shouting from around the corner. Bullshit. The person who shouted jumped up, landing not far from Seal and Mu Ishue, startling everyone. Seal, on the other hand, showed a strange expression because that man was the man he saw coughing up blood earlier. This time, he finally knew his identity as people immediately talked about his background. Your Highness, please stop. The old man who was following him approached him in a panic, but he glared at him as if threatening him. Although the old man was stronger than him, but the habit of obeying him made him stop his steps. He's not crazy, is he? Some people wondered. I didn't expect him to be here, but I heard he's been fond of Miss Mu for a long time. Yeah, outside, he often intimidates young men who also like Miss Mu. Mu Ishue herself, who was currently at the heart of the matter, furrowed her brows, and looked troubled as she was in a somewhat intoxicated state. Bedodem, of course, she knew Luca, but that was just knowing. Having rarely met, she had never really thought much about him. What are you doing? She asked. When talking to others, she still tried to be cool even though it was a little difficult for her in that drunken state. Mu Ishue's question made Luca freeze, as if he was at a loss for what to say since his actions were indeed inappropriate. However, since he had already jumped, it was impossible to back out now. With an uncertain expression, he pointed at Seal. All this time I didn't try to approach you because I respected your cultivation path. Today, you're with this weak boy, I can't continue to stand by and watch you be defiled by this vile creature. You. Mu Ishue was dumbfounded by his words. Perhaps it was because Luca had already spoken, so he began to lose control in excitement. He continued, you are the most talented young woman in this continent while I am the most talented young man. Even if then you want to have a lover, you should choose me, not another man. Mu Ishue had heard a lot of nonsensical nonsense since Seal came to her house, but today she realized that there was even more nonsense. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry while the audience opened their mouths very wide. The old man even staggered to the ground. He fearfully looked at Seal, hoping that nothing bad had happened. Actually, Seal was still quite calm and only laughed softly at most. After hearing all of Luca's words, he stood up while pulling Mu Ishue's waist so that she stood up as well. Being drunk, standing up made him feel like he was floating, and even Mu Ishue seemed to be struggling a bit. Seal ended up hugging Mu Ishue's waist from behind so that they could support each other's bodies, a sight that made Luca's eyes flare with anger, of course. However, Seal did not stop there, he caressed Mu Ishue's stomach, resting his chin on her shoulder while inhaling the fragrant scent of her body. Mu Ishue's reaction was different from that on the horse. The influence of alcohol made her seem to respond to Seal's movements. In fact, even her hand held Seal's palm. How cozy, embracing beauty under the cold night sky, he said in a tone that sounded like poetry. After that, he looked at Luca and asked, you object to our relationship, but what can you do? Chapter 38 Hopeless. You are listening at novelfull.audio. What can you do? Seal's question was simple, the tone of his voice was also relaxed, one could probably laugh because they thought he was joking. Unfortunately, this situation made his words give people a feeling of despair. Although sometimes wise people said that there was nothing you couldn't achieve as long as you tried, but how could one pass through such a high ice palace? Even if Seal said that to a god, that god might still find it very difficult. Luca, on the other hand, was only a young genius. Even if he was given another 1,000 years to cultivate, the result might still be no different. You. The man staggered, literally almost falling over. I can beat you. In the end, he could only say that. Unfortunately, Seal responded to his words with a light laugh. Then, how are you going to beat me? Asked Seal. Ha ha ha, Prince, there's no need to keep talking to this idiot boy, how about we just beat him up? The old man selling wine laughed. He stepped towards Luca. When the old man following Luca wanted to make a move, the middle-aged man selling chicken suddenly blocked his steps while pointing his sword at him. You. The old man couldn't help but show an annoyed expression. You'd better stay there, old man, the middle-aged man replied. At the same time, Luca snorted at the old man selling wine. You think you can beat me, old man? He said coldly, releasing his ice aura, which although it was still at the 6th stage of the hegemon realm, but its aura was so dense that it gave an uncomfortable sensation to those with cultivation above it. It seemed that he was fighting with the 8th stage. However, the old man suddenly laughed. Idiot boy, do you think only geniuses have great combat power, he said. Bang! He slapped Luca on the head. Surprisingly enough, the man was instantly knocked to the ground, even spewing blood while his aura became chaotic, looking like he couldn't stand up anymore. Your Highness. The old man escorting him couldn't help but panic, but knew that he couldn't get past the middle-aged man. This vintner is very strong, the people watching said as they looked at each other. Yeah, he can definitely compete with Luca even if he's only at the 6th stage. Since he's at the 8th stage, Luca is completely helpless before him. No wonder he can steal wine from those monkeys. It seems that he didn't waste his time while cultivating. Luca tried to stand up only to fail. The chaos of his current cultivation made his body extremely difficult to control. In the end, he was able to stare at the old man with bulging eyes. It only goes up to here. Seal suddenly laughed so everyone looked at him again. This was the power of status. Weak doesn't matter. As long as the status is very high, there's not much he can't do. Prince, I want to hang him over there. Mu Ishue suddenly spoke while pointing at the top of the wall at the city gate. Hearing that, Seal wanted to laugh. Actually, this didn't surprise him since this woman had once ordered the Ice Palace disciples to beat him up just because his appearance was annoying. Now, there was another man who was making a big nuisance of her. It was not strange if she punished that man severely. Unfortunately, Luca, who was extremely obsessed with Mu Ishue, immediately vomited blood when he heard that. He looked at Mu Ishue in disbelief. Her words didn't cause any real pain, but the sensation was as if his heart was pierced by 1,000 poisonous needles. Luca would definitely prefer to have his soul torn to shreds rather than experience this kind of pain. Miss Mu, please be merciful. The old man who followed Luca begged for mercy for him. However, when had Mu Ishue ever shown mercy to another person? She only submitted to Seal because she had no other choice. Perhaps when the ice goddess taught her, the most she was taught was to be cruel to men. Mu Ishue stared at the old wine-selling man, signaling him to do as she wished. The old man responded with an excited smile. He grabbed Luca's clothes before throwing her against that wall. Whoosh! Luca was thrown quickly and landed perfectly there. His clothes were wedged in the cracks of the wall so that his body was hanging on the wall. Unfortunately, he was still unable to move, so he couldn't leave. At this point, he could only vent his anger. Although he still loved Mu Ishue, he also came to hate her deeply. Ishue, if you don't kill me now, I will definitely be a disaster for you in the future, and even if I die, I become a ghost that will always come into your nightmares. He shouted loudly, his voice spreading to many areas so that people who knew nothing were confused. What he said made Mu Ishue narrow her eyes for a moment. She then said to Seal, Prince, we better just kill him. Actually, that was a good choice, but for some reason Seal didn't want him to die so easily. He would rather see him live and suffer. To be honest, he had always disliked genius men with big backgrounds like Luca. They tended to be too arrogant and dismissive to those below, always assuming they were better just because they were talented. Alex was a similar example. Although the current Seal could also be said to be rampant, but that was more because he enjoyed his power. Overall, he still has a rational way of thinking. In the end, he said, just leave him there first, later I'll ask for a special formation that can solve this problem. If there isn't one, then we'll kill him. For the time being, it didn't matter if Luca lived because he couldn't do anything in this town either. People will watch over him for him. Mu Ishue agreed with his suggestion. She nodded and said, "Let's go, I don't want to be here longer." Apparently, Luca's appearance spoiled her mood a little. However, her words made Seal smile. "Are you impatient to be alone with me in a room, Miss Mu?" asked Seal, even calling her by her title. Chapter 39 To the Palace Again. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Mu Ishue had already guessed that Seal would say that. And this time, she felt nothing but a feeling of pleasure, making her realize that the effects of alcohol were making more and more changes in her. There was even a desire to say yes to him. However, she still felt somewhat embarrassed by the gazes people were giving her because Seal really didn't lower his voice. Even Luca could hear her words. Seal was getting impatient as the blood in his body became more and more heated. The effect of the wine had really increased his desire. He had no desire for anything else but to take down Mu Ishue's dress. Being impatient, he finally whistled to summon his horse. It came faster than lightning and stopped in front of him with a posture ready to ride. Seal was satisfied with the horse's behavior. Its intelligence seemed to be quite high. After the problem of the thorn piercing its body was solved by Seal, the horse did not resist him riding it. And it seemed to be more obedient to Seal after seeing the respect people had for him. Seal then jumped onto the horse's back, still in the same manner as before, while hugging Mu Ishue's waist so that the woman would also come along with him. Only, Mu Ishue's position was not facing forward, this time she was facing backwards, towards Seal. The woman was surprised because Seal suddenly twisted her body as she jumped. "You're getting naughty, huh, She snorted softly to Seal so that her fragrant breath touched Seal's face. Obviously this was a different reaction as she looked more like a tease. "Isn't it more fun, this way you can keep looking at my face," Seal replied. "Narcissistic," Mu Ishue said with a blushing face. Seal pulled the horse's rope after that and the white horse immediately jumped off before running away from the night market. People looked at each other again, some sighed, and some shook their heads. "It will be a beautiful night for them," someone said before looking at Luca, who was staring at Seal and Mu Ishue with eyes as if he had lost his soul. "Painful indeed, but such is life. There will be many things that are not the same as one's wishes. Even luck has its limits." Mu Ishue occasionally looked at the man because she was facing backwards. To her, this was just his misfortune for making a mess in front of her. He deserved all that. Want to make her his lover? That was annoying nonsense to her because she had always looked down on men until Seal came along and made her helpless. The truth was that even among the men who liked her, Luca was not that significant in terms of background as many of them were sons of gods. "You must feel like a winner, right?" she said, looking at Seal, who continued to smile with a ruddy face. "It's not worth mentioning compared to my achievements in the Ice Palace," Seal replied as if he didn't care. That's a different thing. I know that men have pleasure when they succeed in suppressing other men, let alone when they beat them in getting a woman. It seems that you already consider me a winner in getting you," Seal said with a soft laugh. This time, Mu Ishue only pressed her lips together for a moment in reaction, as if she did not dispute that. "Many men will cry tonight," Seal continued, caressing Mu Ishue's pretty face. "However, I still want to hear an answer from you. Are you willing to do that with me tonight?" he asked, which directly made Mu Ishue punch his chest. "Can I even refuse?" she answered with a question. Yesterday, she was indeed still able to refuse with a threat, but the case was completely different now that Seal's body was protected by two extremely powerful protection formations. "I still want to hear your personal answer," Seal replied. "Ha!" Unfortunately, Mu Ishue still did not answer, only snorted softly while gazing in another direction. Even in her drunken state, she still didn't seem to dare to talk about it. Of course, that resigned attitude signaled that she was not resisting anymore, or with her strength, she would definitely be able to avoid Seal to just by time. In no time, the white horse arrived at the city center once more. It was a pleasant ride as it felt like riding a winged horse above the 7 realms. When she saw her mansion, Mu Yixue hurriedly said, "Let's just go to my place." From her expression, it was clear she was afraid of the palace. If they went to the palace just to stay there, it would be fine. However, if they were doing something fun, Mu Yixue was worried that the goddess would go mad with rage, and then do something against her. However, Seal shook his head. "We're going to the palace," he said, making Mu Yixue press her lips together because she knew that this man wanted to continue showing his dominance. "Are you not afraid of harm?" she asked under her breath. "I'm not afraid, of course. However, you have nothing to worry about," Seal replied. He stared at the palace. Since it was close, everything inside the palace could not escape his gaze. Currently, there was no one in the palace hall. The Elf Queen had already left, perhaps she was returning to her territory to give an explanation of things here and return tomorrow morning. As for the Ice Goddess, Seal saw her meditating in a special room under the palace. It was truly an untouched place, filled with spiritual energy. The problem was that the energy pressure in that place was such that even the gods might not be able to survive, only a supreme god like the Ice Goddess could stay there. Perhaps the goddess was worried about the way he peeped at her, so she went to that place. Little did she know that he could still watch her clearly. "Why?" Mu Yixue asked, clearly confused by Seal's words. "The palace is currently empty," Seal replied calmly. "Hua." He sped up the horse as it galloped towards the palace. It didn't take long before they arrived in front of the snowmen guarding the palace. This time, they immediately saluted Seal the moment they saw him. Chapter 40 To the bedroom. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Seal dismounted with Mu Yixue, then looked at the snowman wearing silver armor. He was the first to speak to him when he came to this palace. His name was Xue Hu, the captain of the snowmen in the entire Ice City. After he saluted him, Seal said, "Help me take care of this horse, make sure to give it the best place and food." See la la. The horse was obviously pleased with Seal's words, it licked its feet again. Seal handed the rope to Xue Hu while the latter said, "I'll do my best, Prince. Have a good rest and have fun." After saying that, he stepped off while pulling the horse, but what he said made Mu Yixue's ears turn red. Seal laughed as he watched her. He then lifted her legs and back to carry her. "Even a snowman blessed us," he said before taking a step into the palace. Along the way, he kept staring at Mu Yixue's face, whose eyes increasingly looked like those of a drunk. The woman held the front of his shirt while her body sometimes became tense and sometimes seemed to relax. Upon arriving at the palace hall, she asked, "Where are we going?" This was actually a question that made Seal a little hesitant, because when he scanned the palace, he found the Ice Goddess room was the only room in the palace. Of course, Seal was not the type to be confused for too long. He smiled faintly and finally stepped into the hallway that led to that room. "You. What are you doing here?" Mu Yixue's eyes opened wide, as she was not one who was not familiar with this palace. She knew what was at the end of this hallway. Seal was too lazy to care about her worries. His hand that was on her back moved up to her head. While she was still panicking, he kissed her lips, which instantly made her eyes open wide. She was not only surprised by Seal's actions, but also surprised by the sensation when Seal's lips touched hers. It was a sensation that made her blood seem to be on fire, making her want to hug Seal tightly. Under ordinary circumstances, it would be impossible for her body to overreact like that in such a short period of time, but the monkey wine was clearly like oil while Seal's lips were like the fire. Oil can be calm, but once it meets fire, it is impossible to control anymore. Seal didn't just kiss her, he started sucking on her lips that still had the taste of wine. The suction made her saliva flow into Seal's mouth. Muishue's legs began to move uncontrollably, as if looking for something to hug. Unfortunately, in that position, her legs could only kick the air. In the end, her hand holding Seal's shirt began to move, as if to caress Seal's chest. She even accidentally sucked on Seal's lips, making Seal's saliva flow into her mouth, something she found more sensational than drinking monkey wine. If monkey wine was a devil's drink, Seal's saliva was like an angel's drink, making her want to drown in it after just one taste. Driven by her heated blood, her courage increased rapidly, and she even began to dare to look into Seal's eyes. Oh! When Seal broke the kiss, she moaned softly. "Looks like you're impatient too," Seal said, looking into her eyes that already showed desire. Even her breathing had faltered. "You're driving me crazy," she replied, which was quite surprising. It was as if she was admitting that she was indeed a mess. Seal then looked down at her legs because he sensed movement there, and indeed, her legs were nudging each other constantly, as if she needed the friction of skin. Seal quickened his pace after seeing that. Finally, he arrived in front of the door of the ice goddess's room, which was still open because she had come out in a hurry. Without hesitation, he stepped into the room. Since he was already familiar with the room, there was no need to make any observations. He lowered Muishue's body and directly hugged her waist, then kissed her again. Muishue still reacted too late. She almost fell as her legs softened. However, the moment one of Seal's hands landed on her butt, she trembled so much that it looked like she was gaining energy. The already lustful Seal had no more softness, he squeezed her ass hard to the point that it moved forward spontaneously. At the same time, Muishue's hands moved up from his chest upwards. Her movements were a little slow, but it could be guessed that she wanted to put her hands on his shoulders. Her courage was still not enough, Seal thought it needed more encouragement. Finally, his face moved downward slightly until it arrived in front of her neck. She really did have a very sexy neck, long and white so that her veins were faintly visible. The fragrant scent emitted by that area on the neck was more seductive than monkey wine, enough to make the brain cells stop functioning except for the cells for sexual appetite. Seal placed his lips on that neck and immediately stuck out his tongue. "Oh!" Muishue shook violently while her head tilted up and her lips parted, letting out a charming moan. Her hands spontaneously went up to Seal's shoulders, one of which even went up to his head, and almost pressed against it. This was a reaction she could not control due to the indescribable sensation. Seal himself was mesmerized by the delicacy he got on his neck. He could not explain what kind of deliciousness it was, but it definitely made him want to keep licking it. At the same time, Muishue was mesmerized by the scene in front of her. On the wall on the other side where she was standing now was a large mirror. In that mirror, she could see her figure and Seal's figure, how Seal hugged her waist with one hand while his face sank into her neck. She couldn't believe it as she looked at her flushed face, looking even more eager than when she masturbated in her bathroom. And seeing that scene only made her imagine more things with Seal. To her, it was such a beautiful sight, she wondered how beautiful it would be when she and Seal hugged each other on the bed without any clothes covering their bodies.